Uh, Dr. Ines, could you tell us about the book you're working on now with Angela?
With Angela Barreto Xavier.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is called Catholic Orientalism.
Catholic
Orientalism.
Orientalism.
And basically what we are trying to point out is that unlike various other historiographies who have always minimized the role of knowledge that the Portuguese produced about India by saying that this was really a small thing, it was only about Goa, and it was not really a kind of a modern knowledge they produced, but it was rather British that ultimately invented, quote unquote, invented in Angela Barreto's, Barreto Xavier's term, invented everything about India. For example, Sir William Jones in Calcutta, he is now hailed as the most important Orientalist, the first Orientalist who dug into Sanskrit, discovered the connection between Sanskrit and Indo-European languages, translated, he was one of those who translated original Indian text. Again, we're talking Sanskrit. So there's this whole idea that Orientalism is somehow British creation. Okay, so Protestant missionaries are also allowed into this creation of Hinduism and description of Hinduism, description of Indian sciences, etc., etc. So we are basically using Portuguese documents, and our findings are that from 16th to 18th century, this is the span of our work, Portuguese have produced immense knowledge about India, and they have produced what we call Catholic Orientalism. So it is a kind of Orientalism, also Orientalism, which we use also in Edward Said's term of the word, which is knowledge and power connected. So Portuguese were equally producing knowledge and power, and producing power through knowledge and knowledge through power. And we are basically trying to make our case on the basis of the documents in Portuguese, but also in Italian, in Latin, in Spanish, because Portuguese Estado da India was, of course, Portuguese, but as they organized the travel from Lisbon to Goa, there were all kinds of other people who were coming in, especially Catholics like Italians, Spanish, other Catholics from all over Europe. They were hanging out there in the ships and going around. And somehow this knowledge has been exchanged between them. So the Italian travelers come to Goa, write their books, go back, are read by other Portuguese, by other Italians. So there is a kind of Catholic type of knowledge, and like Mediterranean, Latin kind of knowledge, compared to later British, English or Dutch kind of knowledge. And this knowledge is obviously earlier than...
How many years does it predate the British Orientalism, or by how many years does it predate?
By basically almost 2 centuries.
I see.
We are talking about early 1500. By the end of the 17th century, the British were already getting in, of course, even earlier travelers and stuff. But so by, let's say, 150 years, 200 years, knowledge produced about India was really Catholic Portuguese knowledge. I'm saying also Catholic knowledge because one part of this knowledge is really produced by missionaries, by Catholic missionaries. And Jesuits in particular, obviously, they are really very overstudied religious order. Overstudied because they produce wonderful materials, and their materials are accessible. So we study them because we can. But some other orders, like Franciscans, have discussed Carmelites, who were not necessarily under Padroado, but came actually through propaganda fide, that became a major rival to Portuguese Padroado from 1622, when it was established in Rome. This is actually Italy trying to get into the kind
Colonies.
of, into the colonies, exactly, into the colonies, but through
religion.
Through religion, and it
Through
was
Rome.
not just, yes, through Rome, also Tuscans, Florentines were also trying, but not really succeeding. But Rome really tried to get in through their missionaries.
To break the
Especially
monopoly.
To break the monopoly. But according to one of my graduate students who is studying in particular Rome and propaganda fide, they were even thinking in the late 17th century of establishing a sort of a papal East India Company.
I see.
That is a fantastic idea. And this is why they sent all those legates in the early 17th century
Business is a big ideology in
who
that case.
created the Malabar Rights controversy. But in fact,
Created
yeah, they created the Malabar Right controversy in 1703, 1704.
the Italians.
Yes, the Italians. But in fact, the person who was sent, Tommaso Charles Maillard de Tournon, he was in fact also had a mission to see if papacy can get its hold as a trading partner.
I see.
So
Very complex.
So religion and politics are going hand in hand. They always did, and they always will.
So where did all this knowledge disappear? I mean, it's not visible in the public discourse now. Was it because it's in the wrong language at the wrong time?
Well,
Or
I
something
think
more than
that
that.
public knowledge, there are all kinds of answers I could give you. But let me talk as a historian. If your history depends on your historians. And historians produce what? Histories, and it becomes historiography. So there is a kind of disappearance. Portuguese knowledge, colonial knowledge, Portuguese history kind of disappeared from the historiographical market. Maybe
From
around historiographical market. Let me be clear about it. There's another historiography that sort of took over all Indian history, and this is British colonial, and even then we can say post-colonial historiography. Somehow deleted Portuguese history is not relevant. So when you call something not relevant, then you don't study it. And if
It's
you
a
don't,
chicken and egg situation.
it's basically from the 19th century onwards, historians said, oh, this Portuguese stuff is just, this was a small piece of land. These people were fanatics, Catholic fanatics. They were pre-modern in every sense of the word, just like Indians were pre-modern, Catholics were pre-modern. So they couldn't, pre-modern people don't make science, pre-modern people don't think rationally. So they were left in this kind of pre-modern, pre-rational world, while we, British and the Dutch as well, to a certain extent, who were merchants, etc. We are the ones who brought science, who brought modernity, who tried to improve those Indians who were also in some some sort of medieval times. All these discourses. These are Orientalist. They're Orientalist discourses, that were famous. And so, in a way, Portuguese history was put outside of the major. In Indian historiography, Portuguese history is non-existent.
But what kind of history is the most important here? Because even Dr. Timothy Walker was studying about plants and medicines. Dr. Timothy Walker was studying about plants and medicines that the Portuguese gained from. In which spheres was Portuguese Orientalism most relevant or most powerful?
Oh no, in many spheres. But if you want to talk about natural history, that Timothy studied as well. I studied actually also. I wrote a couple of articles, and actually one of the biggest chapter in our book is, I think the chapter is called Natural History and the Survival in the Tropics or something like that. The knowledge the Portuguese produced about materia medica, about illnesses, about remedies, about plants, the albums of paintings that they produced, the knowledge that they produced of pharmacy, etc., is enormous. Actually, this is my thickest chapter, and I have not even put everything. And let me just talk about just one particular text that will be really interesting for you, for Goa, is a text called Arte de Palmar.
Yeah, we have
You have it.
We are trying to translate it,
Yes, and it has been recently put on internet.
This
is how I downloaded it. So the text is probably from 17th century.
Yeah, they republished it in the 1920s.
Republished it in the 1920s, early. So I would like to see the real document, but from what I saw and read, this was this is a Jesuit. This is a Jesuit lay brother. Unnamed, but who had incredible knowledge about